What do you see as concert music's place in American culture today?
Well, yeah, thinking about a composer and the music he or she writes and how it fits into the culture, especially living here in America, that's always a tricky thing because every country you go to is different. I was recently a judge at the International Gaudiamus Composers meeting where I heard 9 days of music by composers in their 30s, 27 concerts of music. And by and large, the music that's being composed in Europe tends to be music that's atonal, arrhythmic. Rarely is there rarely is there the use of melody or something like that. And the endings tend to all be soft, do with a triangle and you kind of wait, for it to fade out. It's interesting because many times in American music, the endings tend to be big or dramatic, with a big boom at the end. So there is a cultural difference between every place you go and the kind of music that's composed. But I think dealing with audiences in America and musicians, going back to your question, I think that I try to look at it in various ways. First of all, there's the composer, there's the conductor, if there's a conductor involved, then there's musicians, be it an ensemble, an opera company, an orchestra, whatever, and then there's an audience. So what I try to do as I'm composing is put myself in the shoes of each one of those people. Sometimes I think of myself as a conductor. What would it be like to conduct the music I'm composing? Sometimes I think of myself being in the audience listening to that music. Well, what would it be like if I heard that for the first time? Or I think of myself, if I'm playing second oboe in the group, what would it be like to play the piece? What would it be like to be playing viola in the piece or whatever? So I put myself in the shoes of the musicians. So in other words, I step out of my own shoes, and I think that that's an important thing to do because we get very self-involved in the music we compose, but sometimes you need to have some distance to the music you're writing. So I find that's important.
Okay. Talking a little bit more about the music you heard about, you heard at Gaudiamus. Do you think there's a place for that, at least in the minds of audiences? Do you think that the standard audience member could potentially be receptive to music that's a little more atonal, a little harder to access for them?
Well, I think in the end, to think about how much does one think about the audience when you're composing. I think that what's important is to try to be as clear as possible in what you're trying to say. So I think you can say anything in any particular language using any musical means that you want, be it atonal, tonal, the most dissonant to the most tonal, something that's very romantic and expressive, or something that's very kind of nude, minimal, So you can kind of go between these things. But in the end, you really can't control the audience. You can't control the history of how things are going to fit, I think. So I think what's important is that for the composer to find the music that excites them, and you compose that music, and then you find where that music can fit. To me, that's the better way to go than as far as the thinking, like, how can I make an impact as a composer? Then you try then to manipulate something. I think it's better to just compose the music that you hear, that you believe in, and then you find the right place. So if you're writing music, let's say, that's very atonal and very complex rhythmically, and you're not using melodies and all that kind of stuff, probably you'll have a better chance getting the music played in Europe. So you might want to live over there. And that's if you're writing music and you love visuals and you like John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith and Bernard Herrmann, then probably you'd be better to move to Los Angeles and try to work in the film. If you're doing electronic music, you kind of figure out where's the best place to, where I could do that. So I think that that's the main thing is you have to write the music that excites you, and then you find the place where that music can fit the best. generally speaking, what I've noticed is when you're writing for large forces, the bigger the ensemble, the different the attitude. For example, if you look at Beethoven's string quartets, they're very different from his symphonies. The language is different. There are different ways of approaching music, and probably because string quartet's very intimate, is written for a very elite audience of listeners. String quartets, people who knew a lot about music. Symphonic concerts are written for large groups of people, some who know a lot about music, some who don't know about music. So in a way, the music, I think, in that case, comparing the string quartets of Beethoven to the symphonies, you can really hear that. And I think it's the same way, when you have 100 people on the stage, it's much different trying to deal with 100 people than it is with 5 people. So what I find generally is that it's perhaps more practical to write highly experimental music for small groups of people. And then when you're dealing with large groups of people, to write music where, if you want to work, with that one thinks in a more practical way. I will give you one example. I wrote a piece for 3 conductors and orchestra, and I had each orchestra in different tempos. One of the things I did is that I would have each orchestra have a percussion player who was like a click track, playing like a woodblock or some kind of instrument, that would be actually playing the beat that the conductor of that orchestra was conducting, so the players could hear that click track. Now that was a practical way to have 3 different tempos going on at the same time.